Welcome back to Universal Journey Talk, Part 4 of Episode 9.
Because jujitsu, and as we're finding now, we're in a new world where anybody that's into jujitsu or mixed martial arts in general, is pretty much every 6 to 8 months there's like new stuff that comes out all the time. But kind of like the physical fitness world, there's new equipment and there's new ways of doing things and ways to activating your muscles and your body and pushing it in different ways. Well, there's new things that come out, especially with jiu-jitsu, which is like human chess, all the time. And Erik has been, and he's been in, around mixed martial arts and whatnot for so long that, the creativity of their minds, is just effective as any other person that is starting up a martial art or adding to or refining a martial art. So a lot of the things that Erik comes up with when we share ideas and whatnot, he'll come up with something that I've never even seen before. But because I know the concept, I can even expand on it. And then together we can refine it, and it becomes this tool that is something that might be our own, but that is super effective and super usable. Erik has shown me things that there are different ways of doing old techniques, and I've actually used them already. You know what I mean? To submit other people, I have a one-arm rear naked choke. Erik has a very straight, and I know it's from Erik, but he uses it as well, a very straight guillotine that maybe one day we'll have to do something where we show you on people on your show how it's done or whatnot. But it's one of a kind the way that he does it. It's from the elbow. I mean, it's hard. I can't even. But there's different techniques and different things that are, and that's the real. When you start to get to that level, that's where you're taking the chains off of limitation, and that's where martial arts can bring you when you're at that level. Is that you see how diverse and that's a very humbling and a very empowering and secure feeling, is when you can start to create at that level. Martial arts opens your mind. It's an opening of your mind and an opening of your imagination to create things that have practical use and work in unarmed combat. It's really
expanding your consciousness.
Yeah. So yes, it is true. Like Erik said, maybe none of us have ever seen a live competitive match with Bruce Lee or whatever, but we are not without any references to how good his technique was. When you have your Chuck Norris's, who was an undefeated Ed Parker's Invitational Karate champion for 6 years, never lost. And when he tells you that he can't put a finger on Bruce Lee, well, you kind of have an idea now where his level is. And then also from the word of mouth from other martial artists, that the very nature of Bruce Lee, the things that and the reason why it also makes sense why he was elevating himself maybe higher than a lot of other martial artists, is because he's referred to as the first mixed martial artist. Because by the time Game of Death came around and he was in a tracksuit, the reason why he was wearing that was symbolizing that he had abolished that having a rehearsed routine, or that there are no styles. It's just how good you are of a fighter to maximize the knowledge that you have with the body that you have, and to do the techniques as good as you can be. And that in itself is a martial art. Mixed martial arts now is the culmination of that philosophy, which is now, we can't say, oh, well, this guy going into UFC, he's a kickboxer, or they used to be identified as a karate man, or a taekwondo dude, or a wrestler, or whatever. Now it's just this MMA guy versus this MMA guy, or this mixed martial artist versus this mixed martial artist, because their martial arts level and the test at hand is the culmination of all the martial arts that they've learned, and to whether or not they're going to be dominant in the ring at this point in time against such an opponent. Bruce Lee knew that way going back, and his teachings and his philosophy was essentially the culmination of all that is good and usable from each art. And that's what you have now in the UFC, is that very existence. In order to become successful in a mixed martial arts arena, you have to find what is best from you and study all the martial arts, taking the pieces that you can use in order to become an effective martial artist yourself. So that philosophy has come to fruition. Bruce Lee at that time would have been light years ahead of anybody because they were all focused on being great at their one idea or one, martial art and holding themselves to that one concept. One more thing I just want to bring up too, and you talk about the reality of it. Well, there's another thing that's also very popular nowadays, which is the bizarre world of fake martial arts. That is a very, very real thing. And if you look on different things, you'll see people that are moving people around. But martial arts used to be a cult. For the most of it was very, very cult. Like you go in and your master, and this is what he does, and you listen, you don't question, and this and that. And if they start moving you and doing things like that, and they could do all these weird type of things, and you kind of go with the flow, and this has to be the most effective thing in the world, and all their claims to fighting had to be true. There's a big, big thing now going out and looking at these so-called martial arts masters or whatever with their kind of students that are almost programmed just like a cult into some of their belief systems. And what's terrible is that they're being taken advantage of because they're paying their hard-earned money, and their parents are dropping their kids off to these people, and God knows what they're learning. I mean, it's pretty scary. So Bruce Lee was certainly not a part of that. His was something that was very practical.
All right, so, and actually, I've seen a lot of that stuff where, like, whatever. I watched Joe Rogan and how they just like laugh at a lot of these videos where you get the dude with like, he could, like punch your stomach with a 2-inch finger, blah blah blah, whatever. But it's almost like the students like believe it, so they believe that it'll hurt them. But anyway, it's BS. But anyway, but yeah, so I think that's really good. But now I wanted to just end off our thing with this. Once again, I'm going to do a little bit of devil's advocate here, which is that I do think that there are people that they do get into mixed martial arts, or they do get into self-defense, or they do get into, I mean, if you want to go even higher than that, like whatever, getting, guns and different, arms, whatever stuff to self-defense. In other words, where it's like they actually do it, where they are kind of, they're not the people that should be practicing these things. In other words, they will abuse their abilities. They will, they're the people that, they will hurt someone unnecessarily. Unfortunately, maybe that's part of some of the scenario why it's like, people are like, oh, this person was, he was trained in this and trained in that and that's why he killed this person or he did this and that. And I'm like, that's not a true representation.
It's nothing to worry about. Like in life, there's a bad apple in any situation. But it's just, that's like life. To me, it's all spiritual. So then just like when you go out when you go to your job, there's gonna be individuals that don't have the same working ethic as the other workers, or people that are slackers, and I mean that's like in anything, you know what I mean? But like anything that's not within moderation, usually people always worry about, oh, this thing is what killed them, or this drug, or this thing. But technically, anything that's not within any certain amount of balance or moderation, pretty much anything will hurt you. You take an aspirin and Excedrin shouldn't hurt you. But if you take 30 or 40 of them every day, damn right, then ask the question. Probably, without a doubt.
I kind of equate it to this, Kirk. It's kind of like you're talking about somebody misusing the tool.
Right.
It's kind of like you have a person that wants to learn how to use a gun.
Right.
And something goes wrong. Was it the gun? Was it the gun's fault?
Right.
Or was it the person who pulled the trigger? Was it that person who chose to pull that trigger on someone he shouldn't have, or use it in a way that it shouldn't have been used, on a target that it shouldn't have been shooting at? It's always the person. So anybody could use any tool and misuse that tool. Usually the person that takes that gun and is looking to use it isn't trying to find another person with a gun to use it on. No, because that person might shoot back. So usually they're trying to use a tool to take advantage of another person. So is there that person that will use martial arts in its devastating, dangerous way in an abusive way, in a way that is a bullying way, to get one over on people that now he can dominate because he knows a trick or two? Yes.
Right.
But ultimately, if that person wants to really move forward in that art, he has to be, it's iron that sharpens iron. It's steel that sharpens steel.
Exactly.
It's the same people of the same category. He is not really a martial artist. He's only somebody that can go so far and only really target people that aren't. Because any martial artist that really wants to go and learn about martial arts has to learn from people that really know what they're doing. And those people, you can't pull out a gun of your own because they have their own, and it's probably bigger and badder and with more experience.
But like anything, like a cop. I mean,
Fair enough.
not every cop. There's cops out there that only get a badge because it's pure ego. Then there's cops out there that are there to serve and protect. So it depends. Like, you know what I mean, like anything. You know, like there's always people out there misusing their powers and abusing it. That's like someone that could be someone on steroids. Sometimes you can be like, well, I mean, depending on how they're like, if a person's using steroids, do we just say, oh, they're abusing steroids? If you're abusing steroids, you can get hurt. But if you're going to the doctors or something, he's prescribing you a steroid for certain things. It can also be used to help your body and be very medicinal. You know what I mean? So it depends. But if you're just sitting there doing cycles, whatever, then that's called abusing steroids. That's why steroids has a bad name, because you don't hear about the people that abuse it, and then it's like, but doctors are, steroids was made to help you, you know what I mean, in certain ways. So it's not like, I mean, it's like anything, how you want to look at it.
Right.
An excitement will get rid of your headache, but you take 30 of them, like Cat Williams said, it'll probably be your last headache.
Right.
So,
Right.
it's like anything, the moderation. Now, before I end this, before I got to go, but I want to say one thing to finish the story of Bruce Lee before we get off. If Bruce Lee were alive today, though, Bruce Lee would still be a nasty fighter, because he would take all the techniques and martial arts today and do the same thing he did then. Oh, would he be that good today? Well, that's like he's the one that paved the way for everybody today. So it'd be like, well, who's better, Michael Jordan or Dr. J? But technically, no Dr. Dre, you wouldn't even have Michael Jordan. And just like Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, without Michael Jordan, you wouldn't have a Kobe Bryant or LeBron James. So it's just whatever, But looking at it from today's time in comparison, if Bruce Lee was alive in this day and age now, he would still be the same fighter he was back then. And he'd be nasty.
He'd be far better. He'd be an ill grappler. He would have learned that. His whole thing was about reality and realism. Doesn't get any more real than MMA.
Now
so he
would
absolutely learning that as well. Sure.
Absolutely. And let me tell you, some of the things Bruce Lee was, he was superhuman. Period. His speed, his power his pound for pound, he was superhuman. I don't give a crap how you look at it. When you watch him train, the things he did, it was unreal. He was superhuman, pound for pound. So that was real. You're not watching. That wasn't real fake. When he punches something, you'll know, or he's for real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people, man, that there was something that really happened when Royce Gracie came into the UFC. There was a realization of true martial arts that in my opinion, maybe it never had happened before. Royce Gracie, his brother Hickson is far better and far more dominant. And he used to talk about his going to his brothers, and he'd tap him 100 times, But there was a reason why, that I think that if Hickson had done it, it wouldn't have had the same impact. Because Hickson was a bigger guy, he's like 180,
right.
185,
right.
shape, jack. So for him to go up and beat up people and, choke them out or whatever, you say, but there must be some physical aspect or whatever. But it's another thing when your skinny, tall, gangly brother with like no muscle tone or anything is choking out 300-pound giants.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One after another. The impact of the humble man is so impacted. It's so much greater because he was a weak, like what looked to be more a weaker person.
I'm going to head out. So I just want to say, I'll see you guys later.
All right, buddy.
The part 2. All right, cool.
Catch you later.
All right, nice. Okay.
But when that happened, that was such a big deal. The impact, I think it has had the most lasting impact.
Absolutely.
To dive into and find out what the truth is. And the way you find out is the truth is by putting all our beliefs into an arena and finding out who's going to come out on top. And by the third UFC, when Royce had won them all, and it became a whole different revolution of knowledge had been kickstarted. that has not stopped. But in actuality, that was what Bruce Lee envisioned way back then. It's just that he lived in a time before that evolution took place,
right,
in a cage. So, he had gone as far as he can go. But just like anything in any sport, when you talk about the reality is, Kirk, if you put any football player up against now from football players of the past, or offensive line up from an offensive line from the past, a defensive line of the past, we're just bigger, better, and stronger because we learned what they did in the past.
Right.
So we can expand on what they've learned. And humanity has always expanded on what they've learned. Look at civilization. The Industrial Revolution was a giant thing. We laugh at that now, you know what I mean? Compared to the, technological advances that we have today, the Industrial Revolution is very, very minimal. The bytes of computers. As we go on, we
I'll
always
check you guys. I'm gonna head out.
become better.
All right, later, Heath. Later, Erik.
Right. Later, dude.
All right, man.
So that's ultimately it. That's why it's hard to put one error and say, what can this guy do in this error? Well, if he was access to the same way that we were able to be instructed, who knows? Yeah.
Well, you know what? Hey, look, by the way, once again, I said I'm kind of playing devil's advocate there. There was this is going back, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. I was hanging out with some guys, and this was back when GSP was on top. So we're talking almost 10 years ago or something. So we all went over to their house, and it was me and the wife, and GSP was doing whatever. He was clearly the title match, but there were all these other fights, and it cracked me up, man. And once again, I don't want to make fun of people, but they were like, dude, man, I'll tell you right now, if those guys went up against a real hard boxer, Sugar Ray Leonard, whatever stuff, he knocked him out with the good old American punch. And I'm like, dude, he would never get a chance to get the good old American punch.
You know what the worst thing you can do in any fight, Kirk, that will almost guarantee and secure your loss? Is to actually believe that you know about something that you totally do not know.
Right.
But you believe you do.
Right.
Now you're going to get hurt. Now
Terrible.
That's when you get hurt.
Yep. And it's going to be quick.
The kick coming that you didn't see the shoot. You didn't know the opponent was trying to break your arm. You knew you grabbed it, but you didn't know why. And then before you knew what happened, it's over.
Right. And it actually...
It's over now.
It's over now. And I hate to say it, but it doesn't even last long. It'll happen in 30 seconds, man.
Most fights in the street, if you're talking in the street, most of them aren't very long.
Right.
Because people are trying to inflict maximum damage because, first of all, when you don't have rules, your survival instinct kicks in 3 times as much. So you're not thinking about doing things any super sassy way, and the concrete and everything around you becomes a weapon as well of destruction.
Yep.
And holding someone to it and whatnot is a very, very scary thing. So,
yeah, man.
No, it's very true, man.
Yeah.
But listen, this is great. We'll have to do a part 2 on this, bro.
Yeah. You know what? We will continue this. Good talking to you, buddy. And the whole point of this whole thing is that, look, either way, we need to, constantly try to figure out how we can, be putting ourselves in a more positive, frame of mind and to continue to be positive. Anyway, so I guess that's it, man. So I will talk to you later, buddy.
Do, pal.
Thanks for watching. Give us a like. We'll be replying to your comments in our next episodes. We post almost daily, so subscribe to keep up with the latest.